you were a Sega Genesis fan during its lifetime, chances are you played a game made by Blue Sky Software at one point or another. As early as 1991, they were doing the likes of Starflight for Electronic Arts and Joe Montana Football 2 for Sega. Those early projects led to more Joe Montana Football titles, as well as Jurassic Park and its sequel, Rampage Edition. There was Ariel the Little Mermaid, Techno Clash, Ren and Stimpy, Shadowrun, World Series Baseball, and College Football's National Championship. Whether you thought any of these games were any good or not, we can all agree one of the defining characteristics of their software was their powerful animation routines. They had a real knack for making their characters and animals move realistically, sometimes nailing a look that put their releases in the upper echelon of best Genesis graphics. As 16-bit consoles began to age and developers began to look for new techniques to wow their audience, many of them began to embrace pre-rendered images and animation. This led to games like Donkey Kong Country. Rare and Nintendo came together to build something that would compete with the likes of Aladdin on the Sega Genesis. Nintendo had wanted animation that looked as good or better than the stuff Disney was doing at the time, and Rare's work with SGI workstations caught their eye. That game launched in 1994 to killer critical and commercial success, essentially relaunching the Super NES as a console capable of next-generation visuals. Of course, competition breeds desire, and Sega turned to Blue Sky Software for their answer to Donkey Kong Country. That answer was called Vectorman, a 1995 release that was met with a pretty impressive amount of success itself. In this episode, we will take a look at it, see how it plays, how it sounds, and if those much talked about visuals really were something to see. Hope you guys enjoy my review of Vectorman for the Sega Genesis. Our story begins in the far-off future of 2049, where humanity has abandoned a polluted Earth for other planets. In their wake, they leave behind Raster, a planet-wide AI in charge of cleaning the place up. But Raster is mistakenly attached to a nuclear bomb by one of the robots under his control, and short-circuits, creating the evil new bad guy, Warhead. His first command is for all the cleanup bots to begin creating weapons so they can sneak attack the human race upon their return and annihilate the entire lot of them. Mankind's only hope is Vectorman, a robot that was away delivering toxic sludge into the sun. He wasn't overridden like the rest of his kind, and he's the only one that realizes what's happening. It's your job as Vectorman to stop the robots under Warhead's command and destroy their crazed leader before it's too late for humankind. At its heart, Vectorman's gameplay is a mix of platforming and run-and-gun action. You've played this kind of game many times before, so it's a very familiar setup. Vectorman's base moveset is a hand blaster that can shoot up, down, and diagonally. He's got a jump and a double jump to get around the massive levels, and of course an assortment of power-ups to assist you from there. These are hidden behind the TV monitors you come across. Your weapon system has 6 different options that you can use. There's the default blaster that gets the job done. There's the rapid fire weapon that sends out a massive volley of damage consecutively. The bolo gun shoots energy balls that does a massive amount of damage. The orb is a one-shot explosion that eradicates everything on the screen. And finally, the nucleus shield, which protects Vectorman for a limited time. You also have morph power-ups that allow Vectorman to transform into various different shapes. Some are as simple as a drill or a missile that breaks open walls and floors. There's a bomb that damages everything on the screen, there's a fish to help you get around underwater better, and there's a few vehicles thrown in to give you access to new areas of a stage. Some of the morphs have entire stages dedicated to them, which often changes up the gameplay and perspective. Enemies are mainly composed of what used to be your co-workers, cleanup robots, or what the game calls orebots, that now see you as a target. They come in the form of simple torrents and flying nuisances that litter each stage, to the more beefy and powerful bots that take a fair bit of damage to put down. The stages are absolutely massive, with many having a fair bit of verticality in their design. You are rarely simply just running left or right in a straight line. There is always something to climb that gives each level its own unique feel and tons of exploration. Spread about each of these levels are photons to collect. These add to your score, which determines how many extra lives you can earn. There are multipliers within each level to help you boost your score further. Since the stages are large and there are so many high and low areas in each one, secret items and areas are strewn about liberally. Take your time and look around. There is likely an off-the-beaten-path extra life, weapon, or morphing power-up somewhere you haven't looked already. Don't get comfortable though, there is a time limit you need to stay ahead of. Finally, Vectorman is a one-player adventure only. The visuals of Vectorman are an impressive array of animation and pre-render techniques. The main hero uses what Sega calls vector piece animation, which is a routine where 24 small round sprites are jointly moved together to give Vectorman his silky smooth appearance. From there, many of the enemies and boss characters are pre-rendered to give them their own unique look and feel. Further, Blue Sky implemented a shadow and highlight approach to expand the color range you typically saw on the Genesis hardware. This allowed the expansive use of nice-looking effects like light sourcing when you fire your weapon, light rays through water, lens flare effects, and many other little touches that really made this stand out for the hardware. But it's the animation that impresses the most. Right from the first area, you get small touches like flags blowing in the wind, to every stage after giving you something neat to look at while you play. There's also numerous cool special effects that simulate scaling and rotation, and it comes off very nice for a platform that lacks such features natively. Add in the nice background layers, the stage variety, and the overall polish that everything has, and Vectorman is an impressive graphical showpiece. I think that it showed that the Genesis had quite a bit more life left in it, even in 1995. With sprites this well animated and special effects this nicely done, I would have loved to have seen further adventures of Sega's other top franchises. The sound and music used in Vectorman were produced using the GEM sound driver. For many titles, this would be an automatic thumbs down and a quick note that everything you are about to hear sounds like garbage. But I actually like the way old Vectorman sounds. It's quite laid back and doesn't blast you with the tinny blurps and bloops you normally heard from GEMs. Some of it even comes off a bit like something you would have heard in the Streets of Rage series. It has a flow that fits the narrative, and the sound effects never screech against your ears. It's not going to win any awards for best music on the Genesis, but for something produced with GEMs, it makes a case that good results were quite possible. Let's have a listen to a few examples. When Vectorman was released back in October of 1995, it garnered a huge amount of praise. Pretty much every magazine I followed said it was a solid action game with fantastic graphics. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded it an Editor's Choice Gold and heaped praise on every area of its presentation. GamePro gave it similar praise, again making a big deal out of its graphics and animation. They also went on about its gameplay, which they found to equal its stellar looks. GameFan also lavished it with great scores, rating it nearly as well as Earthworm Jim 2, a game they routinely cited as one of the best of that year. Even game players chimed in and said they loved it, listing only a single negative among their review comments. There's no doubt about it, Vectorman was a media darling for Sega and a big win at Christmas that year, selling over 500,000 copies in just a couple of months' time. But looking back at Vectorman, was it anywhere near as good as all those magazines said it was? Before we tackle that answer, let's take a look at some of the things I think this game gets wrong. First, the sprawling level design of Vectorman often leads newcomers to believe this is a pure run and gun to be played like Contra or Gunstar Heroes. It isn't at all. This is an action game that is deliberate in its pacing, and if you want the most out of it, you need to abide by its design. Every movement of the screen comes with danger, and should you run headlong into it, I guarantee you one quick trip back to the title screen. When you begin, you're gonna want to stalk enemies slowly. You're gonna want to search out secret areas and items. Running through this one may be an option for those that have mastered it, but until then, this is a game best served at a snail's pace. One reason for this is that many of the enemies soak up quite a bit of damage before they fall. That means just barging in headlong almost guarantees a ton of damage for you and a bunch of quick deaths. You would think that your weapon power-ups would mitigate this by giving you more to work with, but every power-up comes with limits that only last a certain amount of time that you can actually use it. So pretty much if you go in expecting a traditional run and gun, this is going to let you down quickly, which will likely lead to a bad time and not wanting to play it again. But the strength of this is more akin to the earlier Mega Man titles. You're going to want to reserve your need for speed and instead take advantage of what Vectorman gets right. The control is super responsive, and the double jump also acts as a secondary attack, blasting enemies below and beside you. It's true the enemies can take quite a bit of damage, but your blaster can shoot in pretty much every direction, allowing you to find the best position to begin your assault. That means that Vectorman is more a creature of finesse, and using your tools properly will result in a much better time. Even the challenge, which at first seems quite daunting, especially with that time limit hounding you, is more doable once you maximize your score and find all the secrets available to you. It's worth a few deaths to get to know the stages more intimately. So to answer the previous question, is Vectorman as good as everyone says it was all those years ago? Absolutely. It's a damn fine action game and one of the better late properties to appear under the Sega banner. Vectorman is forever being compared to the likes of Donkey Kong Country, but these two releases couldn't be more different. Despite their advanced rendering techniques and impressive animation, every other area is night and day. The two art styles are radically different, one ultra colorful, one darker and far more dreary. The gameplay in one is more a traditional platformer, while the other is more a hybrid of several. That can lead to some mistaken expectations and rob Vectorman of any real chance to stand on its own. And that's a real shame because this is actually Blue Sky's best non-sports game on the Genesis. I mean, it's impeccably designed start to finish. You just need to understand the basics before you go in trying to contra the hell out of everything. It's not a traditional run and gun. Pace your play, and there is a rewarding experience all the way through. Vectorman's success also brought about a sequel the following year, Vectorman 2. It continued his adventure right after the first one ended, and again, it's a great looking title with solid gameplay. But despite these two games being reviewed well and selling solid numbers, Sega never again revisited the IP. Vectorman 3 was said to have a Saturn version in consideration that never materialized, nor did the Vectorman PlayStation 2 project ever get finished. Sega even sold the rights so a Vectorman movie could be made, but that never happened either. That has meant that the property has languished in retro hell now for over 25 years, unknown to the gamers of today. It's a story that has been repeated so many times with so many Sega properties that I've actually lost count. Another potentially great series, utterly abandoned and completely forgotten. Should you have never played Vectorman or given it a proper chance, consider this a glowing recommendation. It came at a time when Sega's Genesis was in steep decline, but still showed that 1988 hardware was still capable of some truly impressive software. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.